It's wonderful to be here again in Hong Kong. I have to tell you that my mom grew up in Hong Kong. I came here as a boy when I was 10 years old, and I won't tell you what year that was. But that was in the days of where people used the Star Ferry to get over to Kowloon side, and my maternal grandmother lived here on the island, and her family. My dad's mom lived on the Kowloon side, and I realized, talking with Secretary Lau, that it was near the old Diamond Hill Chinese movie studios. And so my grandmother paternal grandmother had come across the border, escaped across the border, and lived in a pretty primitive set of housing right next to the movie studio. And I remember going over on the Star Ferry every day to visit her and seeing her and other relatives collecting kindling and discarded wood from the movie studio that they could use to cook their meals. And of course, it was very primitive, water rationing during those days in Hong Kong, and a lot of people living on the hillside, cardboard and metal shacks, and sleeping in the doorways. Very, very tough conditions then. But look how much Hong Kong has transformed over these last several decades, and so many of you in the room, the representatives of government and the business leaders from American companies and Hong Kong companies, multinationals, have really done a great job, a fantastic job of raising the standard of living for the people of Hong Kong, and of course positioning Hong Kong as the portal and the gateway of commerce, not just for here in Hong Kong, and not just into China, but really for all of Southeast Asia. The Amcham, of course, deserves a lot of credit and is one of the pillars of this international business community that has helped make Hong Kong Asia's world city and a preeminent commercial hub. We're here this week on the heels of the announcement of President Obama's National Export Initiative, which seeks to double American exports by the year 2015 and at the same time create some 2 million new jobs and support 2 million new jobs. And this, as others have remarked, is the first cabinet-level trade mission under President Obama's administration. While just a few minutes ago, before the luncheon, we signed an agreement to promote more American wine, and I note that on the menu we're serving Washington State wine, and having been the former governor of Washington State, I'm very pleased to see that. When I was governor of the state of Washington, I'd always say that America was noted for its wine. California was noted for the quantity of its wine, and we in the Pacific Northwest, Washington State and Oregon, were known for the quality of our wine. So you made a good choice in serving Washington State wine. But while we've just signed an agreement to promote more American wine in Hong Kong, the primary focus of this trip is another promising area of commercial cooperation: clean energy. With me are some 24 American companies of different sizes that operate in different industries. But together, they represent a cross-section of the best that America has to offer in clean energy, energy efficiency, electric storage, transmission, and distribution. And we're eager to help these businesses in Hong Kong, the Pearl River Delta region, and indeed all across China, the most populous consumer market and the fastest growing clean energy market in the world. Here in Hong Kong, our trade mission members will have 75 one-on-one meetings, including with many of you here in this room. This is, of course, an important commercial opportunity for the businesses that we've brought along, as well as their prospective partners here in Hong Kong and on the mainland. But I want to begin the discussion this afternoon by talking about the nature of the energy challenge facing both the United States of America and China. It is the defining challenge of our time. The one issue, more than any other, that will shape the fate of our planet, our economies, and our nations. When I think about energy, I don't necessarily think about it in these grand geopolitical terms. Instead, I often think about the trip that I took right after I became governor, the trip back to our ancestral homeland in Toisan, just outside of Jiangmen City, less than a half a mile of the big city of Jiangmen, of millions and millions of people. I remember going back to that room, that house where my grandfather was born, where my father was born, where there is very little electricity, not the appliances that we take for granted either here in Hong Kong or the United States, no washing machines, no toilets. Cooking was done oftentimes over wood stoves or using coal, no computers, and maybe one light bulb in the entire room. 2 years ago, our family returned to Toisan. We went back to the family village. The family home had not changed. As we left the village, we did see through one of the open doorways a student using a computer. But still, it is as if life was back in the 1800s, the late 1800s, when my grandfather first left the village to come to America. But in the last several decades, millions of Chinese from villages like ours in Toisan have moved into the middle class. And along the way, they've embraced the energy-hungry amenities of modern life, from automobiles to air conditioners. And this is one of the world's greatest economic success stories, and one that makes the people of China justifiably proud. How far the people of China have come in a very short period of time. And this is just the beginning, because China has some 700 million rural inhabitants, many of whom will aspire to and achieve the comforts of the middle class in the years to come. And this story will be repeated not just throughout the villages of Toisan and throughout all the villages of China, but in India, South America, and Africa. When we add the future energy demands of emerging countries with continued economic growth in the more developed ones, we're left with a stark energy reality staring us in the face. By mid-century, global energy use is likely going to double. Let me put that in perspective for a moment. To meet that demand, we're going to have to turn on 2 new 1,000 megawatt power plants this week, and we're going to have to keep building 2 more power plants every single week for the next 30 years. But we're not looking for any old kind of energy. This energy has to be clean to avoid catastrophic climate change, and it has to be cheap to keep our economies growing. And there are 2 countries that simply must take the lead in solving this challenge: the United States and China. We are the 2 largest emitters of greenhouse-causing greenhouse gases, and this alone gives us responsibility to act. And if that sense of responsibility doesn't move us, then pure self-interest should. When climate change starts creating more deserts and less water in northwest China and in southwestern United States, and when rising sea levels start flooding parts of Manhattan or even Pudong in Shanghai, you can better believe that climate change is going to be bad for business. It's going to be bad for job creation, and it's going to be bad for the quality of life for our children and our grandchildren,